actually. How was that yesterday? In the evening, I got that fever, but then I took the class. So, just like every time, ladies and gentlemen, two different sections to this whole presentation. In the first section, we gonna have 20 questions, and we'll try and see your responses and also discuss. We'll discuss that what's the right answer, why it is the right answer. Okay. Then we're going to take a small short break, and then we'll start with the Q&A. Okay. So let's start with that, with the first part, in which those 20 questions for the preparation. Now, I kept the question short, but the answer is tricky. So this week's theme is the question is not that long, just like last week, it was big questions, right? One paragraph, 4 lines. This time I shortened the length, but tricky answers, right? So that's where you need to focus. Let's start with the question number 1. The two key stakeholders disagree on prioritizing the requirements. One favors the return on investment, other favors the regulatory compliances. Sponsor is neutral, right? What should the project manager do? They all 4 are the correct answers. You need to choose the best one. One is mandatory. The other one is the return on investment. That's the revenue. Everybody loves revenue. I keep saying this. Abhishek goes alpha. Up it goes alpha. So the sponsor is neutral. Then why you don't want to prioritize the return on investment? The deal goes alpha. So it. Because the compliance is also mandatory. Hey, Claude, how are you? Stop it goes delta. Shuttle goes delta. You see, if the sponsor is neutral, I can actually go ahead with the mandatory things as well. But what I keep telling you, one big word in project management is, one of the biggest of the words in project management is consensus. Yes, Abhishek, how many times I said that? Consensus is a big word in project management. How would you build that? By going into facilitate the decision making. The project manager's role is facilitation, not unilateral prioritization. There we go. That's the answer. You keep counting your right answers, okay? I told you the answer is going to be tricky a bit today. All right. Question number 2. The risk register shows many low probability but high impact. The probability is low, impact is high. What's the best strategy? I need to mute this thing. A lot of Charlies. Abdul, how are you today, my brother? How are you doing? Just saw you, man. Good to you there. Low probability, high impact. So if you do the prioritization, so the low probability, low is 2, right? And high is 4. 2 into 4, 6. Good morning, Andrea. How are you doing? Charlie, Yes, develop selective contingency fallback. Of course. So when you have the risk, you do the analysis and then you keep the contingencies to cater to that. So I believe, Charlie, I go with you. Yep, Charlie is the correct answer. Question number 3. Large program component. New law requires compliance changes that will delay the project. What's the best response? It's a compliance change. Why are you not going, Charlie? Tell me. Why are you not going, Charlie? I guess Alpha, everybody knows why you can't go, Alpha. It's a compliance, but then you cannot go ahead and take an action. Why not, Charlie? So if I see a risk which is related to the compliance that I did not plan for, why can't I say, so up to yesterday, that risk was not here. Today it is here because the compliance got changed. Support me. I'll tell you why. Escalation is a strategy to mitigate the risk. But what strategy you should go ahead with comes after the analysis, correct? So the answer is to analyze. Even legal or regulatory must follow the ICC. How many times I've used the word ICC? And I keep putting them on the questions as well. I don't know if except of my participants, if somebody else reads the ICC, they'll think, is it the International Cricket Council? Because that also is ICC, right? Why people knows what ICC means. Integrated Change Control. Question number 4. Your project's contingency reserves is exhausted. A new high impact risk materializes. What's the next step? If you have gone through the training videos, you know the answer to this question. We talked about it not once, not twice, many times during the class. Are you sure this is going to be Bravo? Why it cannot be a delta to submit a CR and increase the contingencies? Why can't that be delta? What's wrong with delta? Tell me. I'll tell you why. Because on what basis you plan the contingency reserves? Tell me. On what basis you plan the contingency? On the basis of, on the cost baseline. Come on, Adil. On the basis of the identified risks. So when you do the estimation, be it the resource estimation, be it the effort estimation, be it the cost estimation, the time estimation. So when you go into those processes, there are 3 different factors that comes into the picture. Say for the estimation of the duration, so it is the effort, the number of resources, and the risk. So the third component, the risk component, is based on how many risks that you see on that particular activity, right? If you have more risk, you're going to keep more contingencies, less risk, less contingencies. So when you planned your project, you planned all of those contingencies. You got an approval that becomes a part of the baseline. Now, during the execution, your contingencies are exhausted already. The only area from where you're going to get the money is the management reserve. So when you say submit the CR, it's not a wrong step to do. But then it says to increase the contingencies. You already established contingencies, it is baselined. So you cannot go ahead and increase that contingency now. What you can do is you can request the management to pull out some money from the management reserve. That's why. You see, known unknown risks, the contingencies, unknown unknowns, the management reserve. Simple, crisp. Question number 5. The HR team repeatedly misses the sprint goals due to unplanned stakeholder requests. What should the project manager do? Savit was the first one to answer. She keeps working on those HR projects. She knows what she would do. That's her kind of a question. Omar goes, bravo, escalate stakeholders' interference to the sponsor. No, we'll go back, Srini. We'll go back there. Yeah. Oh, I'll upload this whole presentation in the chat window if you want that. So at the end of the session, I'll upload this. Arpit goes, Delta, increase the sprint capacity by extending the sprint duration. Some share. I've got some share today. Hey, buddy, how are you? Where have you been? Missed you, man. Integrate unplanned work into the backlog and reprioritize the backlog. You see, all of these are potential answers, by the way. All right. What's the answer? The Charlie. You know what? Okay, let me ask you this. And that would help you to answer more questions during the examination. Once the, hello, sir, I'm good. My application got accepted. Thank you. Fantastic. Samshay, book the exam. And all of these participants whose application are getting accepted, you guys needs to send me those applications, the approved applications. Yes, Samshay? Just send me that. I already have deals with me. You know where it helps? I just remove your name and your contact details from that. And then I share with the other participants because these are the approved applications. So that can really help the future participants, correct? So I just remove your name and your address and your email IDs. So I remove that part. And then I send only the description part as an example to the rest of the participants. Adil's application really helped many other participants to get an approval on. So I'm thinking about collecting all of those applications. So yeah, so where I was, yeah, I was about to ask you a question. Tell me, you planned a sprint, okay? Now you went into, the sprint is in motion now. Now if the reprioritize, when it comes to the reprioritization, you can reprioritize, right? So I'm going to do the alpha as the Charlie, Charlie as the alpha, Bravo as the Charlie, right? You can do that reprioritization. My question is, can you add more items once are, yeah, Adil, Shreyas, application got accepted. All of those people whose application is getting accepted, send me those applications. So I'm going to remove your details and share that with the other participants to help them. But we cannot add. Yes, Adil, that's the question. Can you add more items to a running sprint? Make a note of it. Because in practical life, the people who comes from the practical experience of HR projects, they add items onto the running sprint. Savit can tell you more about it. I have seen people add in more user stories into a running sprint. They say, hey, Sachin, we still have 5 days. We can still do those couple of things. I said, that means your initial estimation was wrong when you were pulling those items from the backlog and planning your sprint. Or you work on that part, buddy. Because this is against the HR practices to include any feature or a user story once the sprint goes into the execution. And if you are doing it practically in your real life projects, that's not the right practice. You should stop doing it. You should focus more on when you're reprioritizing the backlog items and pull in the items. That's where you do the right estimation. With Charlie, dangerous sprint time keep on increasing. No, it is talking about the backlog reprioritization for the next sprint. It is not talking about the current sprint. It is saying integrate unplanned work into the backlog. That's how. So when you talk about iterative scheduling with the backlog process, isn't that what you do every single time? You have more feedback coming in. You have the user stories coming in. You add them to the backlog. You sit with the product owner. You reprioritize, remove, or drop those, substandard ideas, or use the Kahana models or the Moscow analysis, paired comparison. You remember those? And that's how you reprioritize the backlog and then pull the items for the next sprint. So all the unplanned work goes into the backlog, not onto the sprint. We are not talking about the current. We are not touching the current sprint. It is getting executed. We are not touching it. Question number 5, ladies and gentlemen. The supplier disputes contract terms, delaying the milestones. The CPI is 1.1. The SPI is 0.88. Sponsor insists on milestone payment to avoid litigation. What should project manager do first? They all are the answers. What you should do first. They all are the right answers, by the way. Alphas and Charlies. This is what I see. So what that means if the CPI is 1.1? Stop it gives alpha. And Fatima goes, bravo. Good morning, Fatima. How are you today? Approve partial payments while negotiating the terms. So the CPI is 1.1. What that indicates? Andrea, I don't know. CPIs, SPIs. Yeah, I give you that. 1.1 is over budget. Are you sure? And what is 0.9 then? If the CPI is 0.9, what would that mean? Under budget? All right. So the first action is to escalate the dispute via the claim management process. Follow the process. Formal procurement process comes before the sponsor's appeasement. Okay. So you have to follow the process. Under budget, yes. So anybody who says alpha is the correct answer. Escalate the dispute via the claim management process. I told you all of them are the right answers, but you have to choose the first thing that you need to do. Okay. Now, during that process, if the decision is taken to re-baseline the milestone dates or maybe approve the partial payments or management reserve, they all will come during that process. First, you go ahead with the process, the claim management process, and then you take those decisions. First the analysis, then the action. Okay. Question number 7. The stakeholder register is outdated, which is very common in project management. I have seen as a consultant, I have seen those customers who have not updated their stakeholder registers and risk registers like for months. Key influencers are missing. What's immediate action? And that's an easy one for your standards because we talked about the same concept 1,000 times during the class. So for your standards, that should be a very easy question to answer. But is it actually that easy? Yeah, it is actually. The answer is alpha. Update the register. Stakeholder management must be dynamic. It's an iterative process. This is what we talked about 1,000 times during the class. It's iterative, right? So when you see it is not updated, update that. And then you further update your stakeholder engagement plan according to the new stakeholders that came in, the key influencers that came in. And what is that tool that you're going to use for that? To update your stakeholder engagement plan? Yes, Claude, thank you so much for that. The tool is called the SEAM, the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix. All right. When is your exam, Claude? Did you fix a date yet? Your application is approved? Not yet, didn't submit. Very good. Congratulations. How long you are planning to do that? Not submitted the application? Couple of more weeks? Come on, the application process itself will take about 10 days, 6-7 days, right? Good morning, Professor. Good morning to you, Ashutosh. How are you today? Question number 8, ladies and gentlemen. The project closure audit finds accepted deliverables does not fully meet the documented requirements. Jesus. But the client signed off. The contract is time and material contract. What should project manager do? Now, you need to read that question again, by the way. The project closure audit finds accepted deliverables. That means the validation of the scope happened. The customer accepted those deliverables. Now, during the closure, when you're doing the final audit, you discover that those accepted deliverables doesn't meet the documented requirements. Oops. But the client have signed off. He gave you the sign off. What should you do as a project manager? The people who are going Charlie, they need to read the other options carefully. I mean, just saying. People who are straight away going Charlie, consider the other options. She has goes, Afroz goes, bravo. Good morning, Afroz. Just saw you, mate. How are you? Okay, let's talk about it. How many of you have read the PMI's Code of Ethics and the Professional Conduct? When is the exam, Afroz? When is the exam? How many of you have read the PMI's Code of Ethics and the Professional Conduct? Say aye. Everybody, right? Every single one of you. So if you read the PMI's Code of Ethics and the Professional Conduct, okay, under, I told you consider the other options. Did I? So under the responsibility One of the mandatory standards of responsibility is that you need to make sure that all the compliances are in place before you close the project. Is that one of the mandatory? Remind me. Is that one of the mandatory standards of responsibility? I bet it is. I have read that document enough times that I know what exactly is written in that. Escalate the issue to the legal or to the compliances. Why is that? Because the customer has signed it off. If I wanted, I could simply document that as a lessons learned, but the customer is satisfied. But can you go away from your responsibilities? Why am I talking about the PMI's Code of Ethics? I started with the PMI's Code of Ethics. There is a reason I want to remind you something. As a project manager, isn't that your responsibility to make sure that all of these compliances are in place, even if the customer signed it off? Can you see what happens in real life? What happens is the customer signed off. I'm like, how does that matter if they are not fully meeting the requirements? Let's just go ahead because the customer accepted it. Oh, that's your fault, Mr. Customer. Correct? Now somebody says, why not Charlie? You tell me why not Charlie? You tell me why not Charlie? Anybody? A lot of you said Charlie. Yes, Adil. You got the answer. Because the customer already signed it off. So when you say change request, that comes as long as the project is going on. So the customer signed it off. But then, since it is a time and material contract, who has the liabilities? The risk liability is still with you. Oh, sorry, it's with the buyer, right? So you must make sure that before the contract is closed, all the compliances are in place. Good question, right? Question number 9. The CPI is 0.83. The SPI is 1.04. Now, a few people may not know this because they have not read about the CPIs and SPI yet. Okay, yeah. Who all? Claude? Is that you know? Somebody. Andrea don't know that, right? Stavit knows that, although. CPI is 0.83. The SPI is 1.04. The sponsor asks whether the corrective action is needed. Which is the best response? Tell me. The sponsor is asking you, mind you this thing. The sponsor is asking you, do we need a corrective action? Okay. Afros goes Delta. Afros says implement preventive actions on scheduling. My brother, your schedule is 1.04. Fatima says no action is required. The project is overall balanced. Okay. So the only logical answer is the Bravo here. The only logical answer, because the CPI is 0.83. And when the sponsor says, should we take a corrective action? So I don't have to take any action when it comes to the SPI because I'm doing pretty good. I'm above 1. on that. But the CPI is behind, so I need to do a few things to get the CPI back to 1 at least, if not more, at least back to 1. So CPI is less than 1 equals to the cost issue. The SPI is more than 1 is good. Focus on the cost. That's what you need to do. And somebody said, Charlie, no action is required. The project is overall balanced. When you see your cost is underperforming, how it is balanced? Tell me. So the cost is underperforming by 0.17. SPI is above 0.4. How it is balanced? How it is balanced then? If the SPI is 1.17, then I think that you might be right a bit, but then it's not balanced, right? Question number 10. During the execution, a senior stakeholder bypass the change control and directs the team to expand the scope. What should the project manager do first? Expand the scope. Remind the stakeholder of governance and reject the request. Okay. Okay. A lot of you are actually convinced with the alpha. Okay. But then Fatima goes Charlie and Arpit goes Charlie. Abdul goes Charlie. Okay. Do you guys read this? Yeah. I'm not saying that alpha is not the correct answer. But the question is not that. The question is what you should do first. That's the question. She has goes Delta. Seriously, buddy? Seriously, my brother? Coach the team members to redirect the request. Seriously? When it goes Charlie. PM must enforce process immediately. First thing. And then the sponsor will, the senior stakeholder will sit with you. He'll say, why? Why you're rejecting that? Right? That's when you remind him that let's follow the process. Let me raise a change request. If that gets approved, we're going to do that. Otherwise, not. Okay. The question is, what is the first thing that you should do here? Is to get back to the process. Okay. Question number 11. The program manager requests benefit update, but the deliverables only partially accepted. The CPI is 1, the SPI is 0.85, the OPEX is not finalized. What should you report? It's a benefit update requested by your program manager. Right now, you have, let's say, 50% of your deliverables accepted. As per that status, your CPI is 1, the SPI is 0.85. Your OPEX is not finalized. People who are getting confused with the OPEX simply call it the budget. Okay. What should you report? This is how you should interpret this question. So question is simply here and here. That's the question. The program manager requests the benefit update. What should you report based on this? Now tell me. He's asking for an update. They tell me how many benefits that we got from this project so far. So what's the logical answer? The simple thing is that you need to forecast the benefits using the deliverables and the OPEX estimate. What is the budget estimation? Because right now it is 50%, right? So based on, okay, who remembers the EAC from the earned value? What's the EAC? Tell me. What was EAC? And also because half partially accepted, so ETC also comes into the picture. What was that? Now I'm asking, what is estimated completion? What do we mean by it? Fatima, Adil? Forecasted cost or the forecasted budget? The BAC is the budget at completion. The EAC is estimate at completion. So the new budget, right? New forecasted budget. Now, so that means this OPEX corresponds to the EAC, right? Now, based on these two parameters, I'm gonna estimate what is my OPEX, and accordingly, I'm gonna forecast the benefits and present them to my program manager. So that's why Bravo. I just explained that to you. Question number 12. In the sprint review, the stakeholders, why not alpha? Which one is alpha? No, why it cannot be measured? If you want my program manager wait another 6 months, and then I'll tell you these are the benefits that we got, Mr. Program Manager. I'm asking something today because I have to go back to senior management. If I was the program manager, Claude, I need to go back to my senior management and tell them that this is what we've got so far from this project, because my senior management is demanding this. You want me to wait? If you were the project manager, can you tell me that, Mr. Program Manager, let's wait another 6 months, let this finish? Oh, come on, Claude, I need this now. This is what I'm going to say as a program manager. So you tell me what are the benefits till now. So how would you do that? Based on the forecast of your OPEX and the CPIs and the SPIs. In the sprint review, the stakeholders demand last-minute regulatory requirements, not in the backlog. Sprint is 70% complete. What should the project manager do? Easy question for your standards. My question is, why not alpha? Why you guys are not considering alpha as the potential answer? All right. So The answer is Charlie, add to the backlog and prioritize for the next sprint. I know you'll be able to answer that question because there is something that I kept telling you for long during the classes. I know. But why not alpha? Because only the refinement could be done. You see, 10 minutes ago, didn't we talk about the same thing? That you can do the refinement. Alpha is the first deliverable, Charlie is the second deliverable, Bravo is the third deliverable. You can do that, but you cannot add more items to it. So I know that you all know that you need to add it to the backlog and prioritize that. My question is, why not alpha? Because it also goes back to the same thing that the refinement cannot be done. So we have to do that in the next sprint. Why we did not go with that? Because if you reject that, then it's a compliance. It's a compliance mandatory, last minute regulatory. You cannot reject that, can you? You need to prioritize that as a part of the next sprint. That's why, Charlie, I knew you all will be able to answer that. Most of you. Are you keeping account of the right answers that you have given? You guys are keeping count of that? Yes, all right. Question number 12, ladies and gentlemen. The suppliers report are optimistic. SPI slipping. Your supplier says we are on track. What should you do first? Beat the monkeys out of the supplier. He'll be like, come here. I'll tell you what it is. What's EVM? Who was that? Say I. Who asked this question? What's EVM? Ah, you. No, Andrea, you don't know the EVM. It's going to come in 9th class. That's fine. My apologies. Because if that would have been somebody else who already attended my classes, I would be really, really angry if you asked this question. Earned value management. That's what EVM is, Andrea. But that's a tricky question, I can tell you that. That's a very tricky question right now. You see all the options. I see all the options on the chat window. I see the alphas, the bravos, the charlies, the deltas. My question is, why are you not considering Bravo? Why not many people considering Bravo here? Tell you what, the correct answer is actually Bravo. And I was just wondering that why you are not considering that. You see, now let's just reinterpret this question. And I told you it's a tricky question, right? The supplier is saying that I'm on track, right? Your analysis says the SPI is slipping. So the supplier may not be misreporting it, mind you, because as per supplier, I was supposed to give you 100 metric tons of steel if I'm a steel supplier, and I have given you 40 metric tons of steel. What's my percentage completion as per the supplier? If I was the supplier, what's my percentage completion? 40%, right? This is my percentage completion. Now, if the cost of this whole contract, say $100,000, okay, then what is my earned value as per me? Correct? Now, the present value is where the question is. What was the duration of that contract and how much, we should have provided by this point. So if that was, let's say, in the next 30 days, I was supposed to give you 100 metric tons of steel. And today, if I stand on the 15th day, and I'm saying that I have given you 40 metric ton, so my planned value is actually $50,000. And my earned value is 40,000. But that's my analysis, right? I believe that I'm on track. Why? Because from your perspective, you're calculating 15th day as $50,000. I may have a different perception about it. For me, it may be $40,000 because I think the first day is not considered as a part of this delivery. The delivery started from the second day. So although it is 15th day, but since I started from the second day, to me, it is right on time. My SPI is 1. So what you have to do, you have to sit with the supplier and you have to ask him, because you see, this is all about perception, right? You need to ask the supplier that, buddy, why do you call it 50% completion? What's your logic behind it? He may tell you. So since the contract happened in the first, we started delivery from the second. Today we stand on 15, so it is 14 days. As per that, my planned value should be 40,000 and my earned value is 40,000, sir. So I'm on time. I'm on track, sir. Right? So that means what? You have to first apply that earned value management on his data before I could make a decision that he's misreporting or not misreporting. You understand what I'm trying to explain here? So let me check his earned values. That what's your base? What's your percentage complete, Mr. Supplier? 50%, sir. No, as per me, it is 40%. Why would you say 50%? Correct? So this analysis needs to be done on his data, and then you make a decision. So that's why Bravo. I kept asking you why you are not considered in Bravo. Question number 14. Your HR team delivers increments, but release management blocks the deployment until the documentation sign off. Now, that's a very common case in HR projects. Tawit can tell you more about it. She purely works on HR environments. Yes, Tawit, very common thing. The team did the delivery, but the release management blocks it. It's very common in HR projects. Stakeholder says this violates the HR. What do you do? What the project manager would do now? Again, a tricky question. So the release team saying that we're going to finish the documentation first, then only we're going to go ahead with the release. That's where the problem is. The team who did the execution, they're like, come on, we delivered these 2 deliverables to you day before yesterday. You're still sitting on that. Why you're not releasing it? Why it is not going into the deployment? What is OPA, by the way? What's OPA? You see, I tell you one thing, that generally these terms, organizational issue must be fixed. No, that's not the thing. The thing is, the organizational process assets, the OPA. So whenever in the questions you see these terms, what happens is that most of the participants will go with those answers that has a term to it, right? It's a general tendency. This is how the participants will read. But please remember, at times, just to confuse you, the PMI will use these terms. They're going to use those abbreviations, right? Just to confuse you. You stick to what the process is, what we talked about during the classes. So what the actual problem is that the increment has been delivered by the development team, but it is not going into the deployment because the release team says that let us just complete the documentation of it. Now they already took a couple of days for that. So what I have to do, I have to sit with both the parties because both of them are my stakeholders. One is the delivery team, the other one is the deployment team. And I'm going to tell them, hey guys, let's look at the previous release or maybe a release documentation from the previously done similar project, right? Take help from that, get it done, right? And release it immediately. So I need to sit with them, talk about what the solution could be. This is what I should do as a project manager or as a servant leader. So the PMI expects balancer can't bypass the OPAs. Question number 15. New compliance standards emerge mid-project. Add in the cost and the delays. What is the best step? Tell me. Abhishek says it should be Delta. Okay. It's a compliance standard. You're in the middle of the project. Now that compliance standard, you have to comply with that, right? By the way, that adds to the cost and to the schedule. What do you do? Well, that's a straightforward answer, isn't it? Follow the process, do the analysis, look at the triple constraint. What was the triple constraint? If you recall, actually, I explained the triple constraint during one of these sessions only, during the Q&A session. So Sir Harold Korsner, in the year 1974, came up with a theory which he called as the triple constraint. Now, what Harold Korsner said that you need to balance your scope, time, and the cost into the framework of quality, meeting customer expectations. I just said it word by word from his theorem, right? So he said that you have to juggle as a project manager, you have to juggle with three different things, the time and the cost and the scope in order to deliver the quality, because that is what satisfies the customer. So whenever you raise a change request, you see these are called the objectives. Uh, the objectives of the project, four elements, right? Time, scope, cost, and the quality. You juggle with the first three to deliver the fourth one. Okay. So whenever a change request comes up, we analyze what's going to be the impact on the cost, scope, and the time. And can we deliver this quality product by balancing these three things? So yes, even mandatory compliances must follow the ICC. Again, I use the short form, but you know what ICC is because we call it ICC. Everybody knows that. Question number 16. Your project has multiple critical paths due to the resource leveling. The SPI is 0.97 and the total float on near critical activities is less than 5 days. What is best? Somebody said in the last week that, Professor, can you include one of the questions from the critical path? Who was that? Adil, was that you? This is for you, Gil. Answer this. You did the resource leveling. Due to that, you have multiple critical paths now. All right. What's the answer? The answer is monitor the near critical path. Multiple critical path plus the low float is equals to close monitoring. You have to go into intense monitoring because at any point of time, a few of those activities may come onto the critical path, right? Take them as the risk, plan the mitigations, go ahead. And 0.97 is not that bad, honestly. I mean, if you talk about my experience, it can easily come back to 1. It's like 0.3. It's not that bad. So it is under control still, because you would have some threshold and the tolerances plus minus 10%, plus minus 5%. So I believe that will come under it, but do not let it delay any further. And that's where you start focusing on those non-critical but near critical activities, right? Make sure that you deliver them on time. You deliver the critical path activities on time. You should be good. Question number 17, ladies and gentlemen. During the execution, a subcontractor uses non-compliant material. Replacing them delays the critical activities. Subcontractor claims contract ambiguity. What should you do first? All 4 are possible answers, by the way. But what you should do first? You may need to read the question again. I can tell you that. Why the contractor is using a non-compliant material? Because he says there are ambiguities. That's why I'm using the non-compliant material. You start replacing those that delays the critical path activities. And what is the question? The question is this. All the people who are going Bravo should know that Bravo can never be the answer to this question. You're still going Bravos. Bravo can never be the answer to this question. Tell me why. Because you cannot request contingency, because the contingency is for the known unknown risks that you already identified. Now you can utilize the money from the contingency reserves to cater to it. You cannot request more. Okay, you cannot do that. So Bravo can never be the answer to this question. The question is what you should do first. Get back to the process. This is what you should do. Okay, and then continue with this process and see what is required to be done now. Because the contractor, he may also be right when he says that there are contract ambiguities. I don't know if you mentioned anywhere that it has to be of this brand only, the material. You said the grade of the cement should be like 12, right? I'm using the same grade of cement. Now you're telling me that, it should be of that X brand. So there is an ambiguity. So I'm not, to me as a subcontractor, I'm not using any non-compliant material because I think it is not clear as a part of the contract. So you need to invoke that claim management process, go ahead with that, do that analysis, sit with the procurement team, sit with the subcontractor, sit with the claim management team, and then you have to resolve the disputes. So procurement disputes is equals to the claim management. Make a note of this. That would help you to answer the questions in the exam. And I'll tell you something. The toughest of the questions that you're going to get in the PMP exam will be from procurement. All the tough questions are going to be from this area. Okay. Question 18, ladies and gentlemen. The project team is overworked and defects arise in. The QA recommends more inspections, increasing the cost and the delays. One stakeholder demands faster delivery. Another demands zero defects. What should the project manager do? Search for a new job. This is what you should do. you are in trouble. This is what you should do now. The team is overworked, exhausted for them. Defects arising. QA says, let's increase the inspections. Let's do more inspections. One stakeholder says, deliver the product early. The other one says, I should have no defects. Are you sure it should be alpha? Are you guys sure about it? Go and read the question again. Okay. All right, I give it to you. It is alpha. But then I confused you and you changed your answers. At least Afroz did. Afroz hates me. Come on, Professor, don't do that. It can't be Charlie and Deltas. No, it cannot be Charlie and Deltas. It can't be even Bravo. Analyze. Then you take an action. Must go through the ICC. Question number 19, ladies and gentlemen. In a hybrid HR program, that's a hybrid agile. That means more elements from the HR, less elements from the predictor. Your backlog aligns with the business value, but the WBS baseline conflicts with the backlog decomposition. The SPI is 1.1, CPI is 0.89, and several unapproved scope changes are already delivered. The sponsor asks for an urgent forecast. What do you do next? Forecast. What's going to happen in the future? Tell me now, Mr. Project Manager. This is what the sponsor is saying. So your backlog has all of these business values, right? But contradicts with your WBS baseline. Several unapproved scope changes are already delivered. All right, so the answer is alpha, of course, the ongoing management forecasting with revised scope. So the scope is revised now because many unapproved scope changes are being delivered. So they all are the parts of the scope now because you delivered those. So your scope got increased. Based on that, you submit an EVM forecast. Forecast is data driven first. The governance alignment follows later. Focus on the data. Do the analysis, then you take an action. Question number 20, ladies and gentlemen. Halfway through a multi-year infrastructure project, you discover that two contractors submitted conflict in progress invoices. The SPI is 0.92, CPI is 1.05, and a regulatory audit is due next week. The sponsor insists on paying one contractor immediately to maintain the goodwill. What should you do first? All four are potential answers, by the way. But what you should do first? It's a 5-year project. You are done with 3 years. Just let's take it like this. One contractor reports a different progress. The other contractor reports a different progress. As per you, the SPI is 0.92 and the CPI is 1.05. What should be the answer? What you should do first? All right, what's the answer? Reconcile claims against the EVM because one says some other progress, the other says some other progress. Let us just validate this thing first. And then either I have to pay you or to escalate that issue. I'm going to work on that later. First, I'll do the analysis that maybe your progress data is correct, but the other one's not correct, or maybe his is correct and yours is not correct. How would I know? Let's just perform an value on your data set and see what we come up with, and then take an action. So bravo is the answer, ladies and gentlemen. These were the 20 questions. In this case, we are ignoring this. No, we are not ignoring nobody. The question is what you do first. You'll take his opinion later. What is the first thing? The first thing is to what you're going to tell to the sponsor. Who's wrong here? The contractor one or the contractor two? On what basis you're going to say that? Tell me. How would you explain this situation to the sponsor? Without having the data. Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. Good questions today, right? Short questions, but tricky. Tricky in terms of answers, tricky in terms of logics. Give me your scores, your honest ones. 16, 15, 14, 15. 16 and 14, 15, 13, 15, 18. Adil? Yes, yeah. Still 18? Fantastic. Awesome. Awesome. Kuma got 17. Fantastic, my brother. 15 and 16. 16s are not bad either, by the way. 10 and 3. Yes, because you don't know a lot of those terms yet. What's the pass percentage? You see, the PMI never officially writes that percentage data on the website. But once I sent a mail to the PMI asking what's the percentage, on that mail, they said you need to score 80% in all the 3 domains. All the 3 domains. You need to score 80%. What about rest of us? What's your score? We have 25 people sitting in the class. I see like 15 responses on the chat window. 9 out of 12. Oh, that's a good score. That's a good score. 80%. Yes, easy, right? Out of 180 questions, you need to answer 144 correct, and you pass the exam. Well, look at that way, right? Fatima. She has got 70. 17 is a good score. I'm really happy with her deals performance today. If she scored 18, that's a pretty good score because these questions were not easy. I can tell you that. I have written those. I know these are not easy, right? So if you scored 18 out of 20, you did absolutely superb. Anybody over 16 is pretty good. I'm not even reaching 60% on the mock exams. You know what you need to do? You need to figure out your gaps in the knowledge. So when you give a wrong answer, just don't get demoralized that, that's a wrong answer. Think about what you thought when you gave this answer and how it is wrong as per the PMI. You need to use these fillers. You need to fill those gaps. Okay. And that's the only way, I tell you. You have to understand where am I lagging? Because unless you do that, you'll not be able to improve on that area. When is your exam, Fatima? Oh, you did not book it yet, did you? All right. So the next part is about the Q&A, but then let's just take a break, right? So we'll take a short break and we'll come back and then do the Q&A. So for now, I'm gonna, okay, but then I have to show you the timer. So question PPT, please. Yep. All right. That's the week 9's PPT. Let me upload that on the chat. Okay, there we go. Initially scheduled in October, but rescheduled. You're busy in October? All right. So not enough preparation. I've uploaded that document. So we'll start with the Q&As after a short break. I'll see you after the break. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Let's start with the post-break session now. And in this section, whatever questions that you have related to the course, the material, the exam, you ask me those questions, I'm going to answer those. I'll read the question from the chat window. If anyone has a question. Why IMC has given 50% marks? Because that's our internal test to release the certificate to you. And it is generally 50% in all the other institutions as well. So it is only to release the 35 contact hours to you. If we keep it 80, then you have to prepare for 3 months before you could score 80%, isn't it? Then your certificate will be released after 3 months. You need it today. Because you are very fresh after doing the training. So we believe if you are able to score 50%, that means it's good enough for you to get the certificate and then prepare for the higher percentage. I still get confused when thinking what is an artifact and what is not. Any document which can reconstruct the history of the project is an artifact. Okay? So the MOM is an artifact. Baselines are artifacts. Product increments, the product backlog is an artifact because that tells you the whole story of what were the initial items, then how many we delivered, how many new we added. That tells you. So just focus, say the scope management plan. Tell me, is that an artifact? Claude? It's not an artifact, right? But because that doesn't tell you the story. That doesn't tell you the history. Correct? So that is how I, identify which are the artifacts, which are not. If that can reconstruct the history, that's an artifact. If you need to document that for the purpose that in the future it could be used by the future project managers, that's an artifact. I mean, that's the PMI's definition. Any other question? Srini, you got a question, brother? Anyone? I have one suggestion. Yes, Adil? Some share I cannot pull it. Okay, let me just stop the sharing first. Can we please plan the next session with a timer for the question? For an example, giving ourselves 1 minute per question so that we can practice. We can do it, but then I need to figure out a way how to run that clock on the screen. We can do it. It's a good suggestion. I need to pause this thing. And let me just read what some share said here. You are okay. I'm reading out this question for you guys so that you also hear that. You're adding an essential feature to your product roadmap. Your team believe they can complete the feature in next 6 weeks. However, the feature is quite large and a bit more complicated than normal. One of your lead developers says they worked on in a similar feature in another company, and it took around 4 months to complete. What will you do next? So the question is what you should do. So there is an essential feature. That's the thing, right? It's an important essential feature. You're adding that to the roadmap. The team thinks, your current team thinks it's going to take 6 weeks, but it's a complex one. The lead developer says it's going to take 4 months. Okay. What should you do next? Now the answers are: use relative estimation, assign in the amount of points your team agree on the product roadmap. Use analogous estimation and place the feature with around 4 months to complete. Use pessimistic estimation and place the feature with around 4 months to complete. Use function point estimation to show the amount of business functionality in the feature. All right. What do you think is the answer? It's on the chat window. You can actually pull that question on your screen. You just click on that question from Samshir. So Samshir, what is your question here? Are you confused about what should be the answer? To me, the answer should be alpha. What is the answer that this simulator tells you? What that says? Samshir? So over budget and under budget, please explain. No problem. You were supposed to do a job in $100, but you actually took $130. So are you over budgeted or under budgeted, Umar? Question for you, my brother. You were supposed to do a job in $100. You took 130. Is it over budget, under budget? Absolutely. What's wrong with you, Arpit? It is over budgeted, correct? And if you could do that in $90, that's under budget. That means you're doing good. We estimated 100, but we spent 130. Is it not going over your budget? So if the budget is $100, in reality, you are spending 130. What's your CPI? Come on, do the maths. No, we did not. Come on, understand this like this. So when you planned the budget, it was based on your best practices, best estimations, right? The best of the contingency in the management reserve that the management could give you. Based on that, you had $100 as the budget. Now, in reality, if you took 130, that means you went over the board, you went over budget. So that doesn't mean that your initial estimate was under budgeted. It means you spent more money, maybe because of those unforeseen reasons that you cannot control. Because of any reason, the price got escalated, your material got more costly, right? So because of any reason, it's not always the project manager's fault. So up to yesterday, the steel, the correct answer is bravo. I don't think that's the correct answer. Okay, I need to look into the question again. Because you see why I'm saying the Bravo is not the correct answer, because it uses the term analogous estimation. If my memory serves me right, does that say analogous estimation? We don't do analogous estimation in agile project management. We do story pointings. We measure the effort, not the time. Remember? So if you're going with that estimation, and again, the first option also talks about building the consensus. You see, your lead developer says 4 months. The team thinks 6 weeks. Okay. So when you play a plan in poker, then the lead developer will explain that if I'm going with 13 as the story points, why am I going 13? Or if I'm going 21, why am I going 21? And the team will explain that why we are going 13. So that's not analogous estimation. That's to build a consensus, and that's how you move ahead. We just said today that the consensus is the big word in project management. You simply cannot go autocratic and say, because the senior developer is saying this, let us go ahead with that. That's not a fair practice. So if the answer is talking about analogous estimation and just go ahead with what the senior developer is saying, I don't, I mean, I may have a dispute with whoever wrote this question. Okay, let's read that. When the effort on a feature or deliverable needs to be estimated, there are people who have experience delivering a similar item. You can use analogous estimation to estimate the initial effort quickly with a medium level of urgency. Oh, that's not medium level of urgency. That's it. Nowhere says it's a medium level of urgency. First thing, if you go back to the question. Second thing is it's an essential feature. So it's an important feature, correct? Now the PMBOK guide, I mean, okay. The PMBOK talks about when you have so much of the analogous estimation data available, and you know it is an estimation technique which is more relevant to the predictive methodology projects. In Agile, we are not measuring, we are not doing that measurement. We go with the relative estimation in Agile. It's very clearly an Agile project, right? So I disagree with this. This is what I'm going to say. I disagree with this answer. I mean, I could actually debate whoever wrote this question, and I know who probably did that. I don't want to name it. That's a recorded line, but he's a friend of mine. I'm going to buzz him. Yeah, I already downloaded those screenshots with me, some shit. I'm going to ping those screenshots to him. That, hey, what did you say here? I think I have an idea who wrote these questions. It's a very small community, actually, some shit. If you see, I can count in the world, there are not even 50 of those instructors of that repute. Not even 50. So we all know each other. And at times, when you keep working with the people for so long, you get an idea about their vocab that they use. So I know whose vocabulary is this. Because Charlie talks about analogous estimation. That's why. Okay, what is this now? Asking for my question, why not? Okay, I have to read that question first. A project team. Hey guys, run that question on your screens, please. A project team implements a change that was approved by the change control board. The change was intended to minimize a risk, but it had the opposite effect, the secondary risks, right? What should the project manager have done to avoid this outcome? What he should have done before getting it approved by the CCB. Confirm the effectiveness of the risk response and monitor the progress. Updated the assumptions log with the details concerning the risk. That cannot be the answer. I can tell you right now, Bravo can never be the answer. Perform a risk analysis to quantify the project risk exposure. Can't be the answer. Developed a probability and the impact matrix to determine the risk's priority level. Cannot be the answer. Simple answer is alpha. Simple answer. Now, tell me why. Because what the question is saying, that right now it already got approved, right? The CCB approved it. When you implemented that, that's when you saw, oh, because of the action that we performed, we have a secondary risk. Now the question is what you should have done before taking an approval. Okay, so if you do, we need to remember all of these models. It is good to remember the models, by the way. Now, what you should have done prior to taking, an approval, you should have confirmed the effectiveness of the risk response and monitored the progress. Why do we have monitored the risk process? Where is Fatima? Fatima, why do we have that process? What are the reasons to have monitoring the risk process? Tell me, tell me. There are three different reasons I told you the other day, right? What are those? The residual risks, the secondary risk, and the contingent response strategies. Oh, it happened, actually. Read the question. It says when you implemented that, it went against what we planned. So we planned that we will use the fire extinguisher. Let's take it like this. We planned that we're going to use the fire extinguisher to control the fire. Same example that we took, right? Back in our times during the class. Now, because of that action that you took, because of that, now you have fire at the other place. That's where monitoring the risk will come to the picture, right? So that means when you're planning the risk responses, you also have to plan. So plan for failure, right? So this is what we say. So you plan for the secondary risk, and if not, then the contingency, right? So the contingent response strategies. This assessment should have been done before you took the approval. Then all right, so I can use the fire extinguisher. But if because of that action, if we have a new risk, then what we need to do? You should be ready with that, right? Because it may happen. Either the secondary risk or the contingent response strategy, any of these two things. So you should have done the assessment first and planned the risk accordingly, monitored the risk accordingly, and it could have avoided this situation. All right, what Samshir says here, pull that out on your screens, please, and I'll pull it out on mine. Shivari model of skill mastery, McClelland's theory of needs, Herzberg's. I have told you all of these. McClelland's, Herzberg's, Marsh laws, two-factor, the hygiene factor, motivational theory, Oscar model. You see, you may read those before you go for the examination. McClelland's I explained. It is repeated multiple times. Marshall hierarchy of needs repeated multiple times. So yes, you can do that. You just read them before you go for the exam. You don't essentially have to mug them, but you need to at least understand what these things are. Any other question, ladies and gentlemen? Good discussion. That's a fantastic discussion today. I see that. It's awesome. Samshir, remind me what you said. When is your exam again? November? You booked the exam, right? You already booked it? In process, okay. Okay. Any other question, ladies and gentlemen? What is the best way of doing crash course preparation for the PMR? What's the best way of doing the crash course preparation? I told you the best way on the last class. You just read that one book, only read that one book, do as many simulations as possible. You're ready for the exam. Are you guys following me on LinkedIn? You saw how many people passed the exam last week from the previous uh, Q&A that we did to this Q&A. You saw how many people passed the PMP? 16 people. And that's below average if you compare that with the last few weeks, because not many people wrote the examination. If you write the exam, you'll pass the exam. They all attended the same classes, they went through the same material, same suggestions. All right, Samshir. So, yep, you should be getting the exam voucher really soon now. What do you suggest to read? I'm writing that on the chat window. I suggest you to read this and do the questions from here. You have both of these available with you. And that book contains 2,000 questions. If you answer all of those, you are absolutely ready for the exam. All right. No further questions? Are we good for today? Yep. You have one. Okay, let's read that one. Yep. Let's read. Open that on your computers, ladies and gentlemen. There is a question on the chat window. You're an agile project manager and holding daily stand-ups with your team. You notice people accusing other team members of not doing their job, and there are some tasks that are not mentioned anywhere and no one is responsible for. The team velocity has slowed in the last 3 sprints. What will you do next? Refer to the team charter and the team roles and agreed ways of managing the conflict. Raise it as an issue in the next retrospective and come on a solution with the team. Assign the team roles to those you think are the best suited. Work with your team to size the user stories correctly so the velocity improves. I don't think Charlie and Delta are the answers to it. It has to be between Alpha and Bravo. I'm going to go to Alpha, refer to the team charter and the team roles and agreed ways of managing the conflict. What is the answer? I mean, I could actually go Bravo, but then I don't want to wait for the next retrospective because that's going to be like after 2 weeks, another sprint goes by. So I don't want to wait up to that time. And there is a clear conflict. The line item number 2, you notice people accusing the other team members of not doing their job. So you need to clarify on the roles, responsibilities, right? And build the consensus. I'm going to go I'm going to go alpha here. So when I pause the screen, does that also pause my video? No. So the video runs, but the screen doesn't, right? All right. Well, let's see that. So you see, I said I could go Bravo. I said it. I can raise it as an issue in the next retrospective and come up to a solution with the team. But some share, you see, I told you during the explanation that Bravo is also a potential answer. But then the problem is that retrospective happens at the end of the sprint, right? Now, if I wait another 2 weeks and let the velocity of my current sprint again go for a toss, so if I have to choose between alpha and Bravo, I'll still go alpha. It's lower the velocity. This is what I'm saying, Fatima. So I don't know why would somebody wait for 2 weeks? Why would you want to wait 2 weeks, making it absolute mess and then so I don't think it's a correct answer. Again, there are a few questions. When you write in 100 questions, there would be 10 of those questions which are debatable. Okay. And I'm not bringing my experience as a project manager into the picture. I'm just going rational with what a project manager should do or what a servant leader should do. The servant leader should facilitate. That's what he should do. He needs to build a consensus. This is what the PMI keeps telling us, right? And you need to refer to the team. The whole idea behind defining the team charter was to manage those conflicts and make sure that everybody is on the same page, isn't it? So when I have 3 strong reasons to go alpha, and if I go Bravo, and I kept saying that Bravo is not a bad answer, the only thing is I don't wish to wait that long, let this conflict grow, let the velocity go down again, and then take an action. Why should I wait for that? So yeah, I disagree with the Bravo very humbly. I'm very sure now who wrote this question. So that also goes to him. Okay. Because this is how that particular writer thinks. I was a part of debate with him once. I know who wrote that. Anyways, good, right? So shall we wrap it up for today? Yes. Awesome. So thank you so much. I hope you liked this. And it was the 9th week that we did that. I'm looking forward to have another one, next week. Great session, so informative. What should we get this? What should in the exam, if you wouldn't get that kind of a question in the exam, trust you me. I've given that exam twice, one in 2006, the other in the PMI's questions are very clear. They don't on purpose make it so confusing. They don't do that. Because the PMI's idea is to check what is your thought process as a servant leader and as a project manager. So the PMI would never give you these kind of questions. They may give you these questions, you see. So when you talk about this question, now that tests your understanding about that how good you know about the SPIs and CPIs, how good you know about that what should be the right process, what is the first thing that you should do. The PMI would always have clarity. They'll give you the clarity that this is a clear situation. Okay. It would not try and trap you on should that be so. Reading between the lines is never the PMI's policy. The PMI is very clear in writing the question. Okay. If that question comes in exam, go with alpha. Go with alpha, I'm telling you. Because as per the PMI, the alpha is the correct answer. As per that writer, Bravo is the correct answer. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for today, ladies and gentlemen. You liked it, you get a feedback link, right? So when you exit the class, file the feedback, give it a 5, right? And I shall see you in the next Q&A now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless you.